thoughtful ideas and suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and all the
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us perhaps for the first time here for HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, we can be found now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. and on Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. As always, in the top of the hour, let me thank you for your thoughtful emails, texts, and phone calls concerning previous shows we've aired here on HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, but in particular, your great ideas for guest topics and subjects to be covered on upcoming segments of Dialogue Houston. After all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show on HCC TV, proudly now in its 29th year, and we look forward to continually serving you in this endeavor. We're all coming out of the pandemic of 2020. This is now the summer of 21. What if there was a book that took in the consideration of all that we went through in 2020, when it looked at how it tested our humanity, the fabric of society, the stress, daily news cycles changing every day, the crisis of the moment, the global pandemic, the racial injustice, the inequality, the public health disparities, unemployment, homelessness, wildfires, hurricanes, flooding, and what did that all do to our human psyche? And what if there was a book that helped us look at the mosaic of thoughts and perspectives about subjects and emotions born out of this human experience, out of this common experience of going through the pandemic together in 2020? And what if the book looked at questions that allowed us to have a voyage, to take a trip around our world of thoughts? It is not a critique of perspectives and beliefs and opinions, but an opportunity to pause and think and consider new ideas and rethink what you believe and why you believe it. Well, guess what? Just this week, there is such a book. And the book is entitled Beyond Words. The wonderful graphic you see behind our guest, Russell Richard. He is the author of this wonderful book, and we're going to just dive in and have a conversation about Beyond Words. Welcome, Richard.
Good afternoon. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. It's great to see you. It's great to be with you. And I hope you and your family and the HCC team are all doing well.
Well, thank you, sir. It's good to have you back, and congratulations on this new endeavor.
Thank you.
On this new roadmap and milestone and this great book that you've written. Just to mention up front, it is a follow-up to his first wonderful book entitled Leadership, The View from Here, which gave some very interesting perspectives and viewpoints about what leadership really is, particularly in times of crisis, and how one needs to rise to the occasion. So tell us what led to this wonderful book that I just finished reading. Couldn't put it down. I had to come back to it twice and read it again. By the way, I applaud you on the size of the book, people. Just giving you a warning. It is 10 by 13 and a half or 10 by 14. It grabs your attention. The cover grabs your attention. The size of it makes you want to pick it up and read it. And it is really a different kind of book that guides us through some life experiences and shows us some insights. So first of all, tell us, Richard, Russell, why did you write this book?
Larry, this was a special project for me. This book was inspired by the year 2020, or the unprecedented events that occurred in 2020. And in my personal view, 2020 was perhaps one of the most tumultuous years in modern history, certainly in my lifetime. And I think we all listened to and watched news feeds and were captivated by some of the headlines and some of the news, all of which dealt with a global pandemic and the loss of life. It dealt with an economic crisis that gripped the world. And we saw vivid graphic images of inequality and racism that I think struck a chord in all of us and triggered emotion. And so I tried to capture some of that in writing, and those writings became the book, Beyond Words, an intersection of philosophy, inspiration, and poetry.
So it becomes really a guide to help the individual human being who picks it up and spends time with it. Out of it comes this looking at introspectively their own personal growth and fulfillment, does it not?
Well, Larry, you probably recall when I was on the show last year, I made a comment. We were in the thick of COVID, and I said that COVID was not period. It was a comma. And what I meant by that was that we were going to get through it together, and hopefully we would come out on the other side better. Whatever better meant for you individually and as a family, as a company, as a government, society. But I thought it was a time for us to be introspective and to really examine our priorities and assumptions. And I took that to heart, and I was reflective and introspective. And I thought about some of these things that I think we all think about from time to time, like life, death, and the future. And I think COVID forced us to all think about those things. And those things created this, this writing of mine. But it's interesting to note that as I was writing these chapters, Larry, I really had no intention on creating a book. This was somewhat of a mechanism for me to help me get through COVID, because we were confined to our dwelling places, as you recall. And, you know, there were no events happening that we would typically attend. Restaurants were closed. And so we're at home. And I needed something to help me cope with the solitude, and the writing and the thinking deeply about some of these issues helped me.
The 21 themes, which we'll go through a little later, really raises the point and the question of taking the time to be introspective, reflective, and meditate on what, as it says, intellectual curiosity, to determine who we are and why we exist. That's some pretty deep stuff in this era that we're in now, in this divisive, divided country, divided society, divided everything that you can think about. What's our role? What's our place? What's our responsibility? What's our response to be? And I really enjoyed going through those themes, because it helped me concretize why I am a servant leader and have been a servant leader all my life. And here's my quick definition. We are put on the face of the earth for one reason and one reason only: to serve our fellow human being.
Sure.
I get to be selfish only in one regard, that I take care of myself, so I'll be healthy, ready, and able to serve other people, so I can be selfless in my service.
Mm-hmm.
And you pick up those themes in so many different ways. So the question I have to ask, since it covers such a wonderful multitude of issues and things, kind of who's the target audience for this? Whom do you want to pick this up and use it to really guide them as they go forward?
Well, Larry, I think that this book is for all readers. I think that there's something in the book that will resonate with everyone. As I mentioned earlier, I think subjects like life and death and the future and those sorts of things are things that we can't avoid thinking about. You know, I write for philosophy, I write for inspiration, I write for poetry, and all of those are intended to get people to think and to really think deeply about what it is that they believe. And so I think that when they read these chapters and they pause and think about it, I think they will hopefully be inspired.
Well, it made me concretize my definition. If somebody asked me the other day, well, what do you do? And I said this, and it came out of me so quickly that I realized it's a phrase I used to use years ago, but haven't used lately. Mm-hmm. And I answered them this way: I help the creator with his or her creations to become more fully human.
Yeah.
Wow. That's my job. That's my job.
Wow.
And so the question is, and the book leads us to that, when you go through it, it resonates with me, and it resonates probably with most people who pick it up, in a way that allows them to take a step back, reflect on who and what they are and where they're doing now, and more importantly, what are they called and want to do going forward. It is that momentary introspection look, moment in time now, who I am, what I am, how I see and understand myself, more importantly, how others see and understand me.
Sure.
But what is that next phase that I'm called to do and be? And you do that well. You do that well by helping people kind of through a little roadmap. Maybe it was intended to be a roadmap, but it is a roadmap. And let's walk through those real quick, because I want to spend some time on them, because they're very deep. There are 21 themes. The first one is hope. Mm-hmm. And it was, to me, very intellectually telling that you start off with hope.
Yeah.
Because nothing happens without hope. So tell us about hope, and then we're going to walk through the 21 of them.
You know, I appreciate you bringing out, there is 21 chapters in the book, and the way the chapters are lined up in the book, the order of the chapters in the book is not necessarily the order in which they were written. As I was pulling the book together, I looked at all of the chapters and tried to create a nice flow of chapters from chapter to chapter. For example, after hope, we talk about leadership, and after leadership, we talk about forward and what that looks like. But Larry, I think we were all at a place at some point, if we're honest with ourselves, during 2020, where we needed hope. You know, we didn't have answers. We didn't know what this COVID-19 pandemic was going to be from day to day. And we needed hope. We needed something to hold on to, some type of assurance that we're going to be okay. And so in thinking about that, I was inspired to write the essay on hope. And I go back to it from time to time just to reflect on it whenever I need encouragement.
Well, I think it's such the flow to me was intentionally Holy Spirit led or just laid out between something you decided to do and along with your editor. There is a flow and there's a rhythm. And I love the way they kind of build on each other. Like I said, consciously or subconsciously, they ended up building on each other. But the theme that resonated to me through 3 or 4 of the major themes is legacy. What's embedded in almost every one of those, or at least a good half of them as I read it, is the question of your own individual legacy. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to stand for when you're gone? It's not your money, your house, your position, your title. What have you done to help others? What have you done to serve? What have you done to serve your community? And so that theme of legacy comes through me so strongly. That may be just where I am. I think every book speaks to individuals differently. It may be because of the place that I am, the mindset that I'm in right now. It spoke to me about legacy.
Sure.
And that what it says so clearly, that to get to the legacy you want and expect to have, all the things that you mentioned are part of taking into consideration so that you're in the right mindset, the right attitude, the right perspective to achieve and accomplish your legacy.
Sure. No, I agree. I think that's an interesting take on it. I think one of the things that I'm most intrigued about is, you know, I consider this work art. I think the cover of the book is very attractive and very artful. And one thing about art is that we can both stand in front of the same
Ain't that
work,
true?
art, and we interpret it differently. And so listening to your interpretation is quite intriguing to me, and I'm intrigued to hear others' interpretation. I try not to interpret for the reader because I think I would not do them justice at all, because as I mentioned earlier, philosophy, inspiration, and poetry is intended to inspire thought and thinking. And so I don't want to interpret it for you. I want you to give me your perspective. And
now, having said that, what resonates with you the most?
Well, you know, that's an interesting question. I won't say I have a favorite. Or what I would say is that my favorite was the one that I was writing at the time.
Good answer.
You know, I think that the very first essay that I wrote was Finesse. And it was at a time where I really felt I needed some more balance, and I needed to understand how to finesse my way through some of the things. And so I go back to Finesse, and it ministers to me because it centers me, it grounds me, and it reminds me that no amount of my anxiety is going to change my situation, and that change and progress will happen through daily action. And so I'm drawn to Finesse, perhaps more than the other chapters. And then again, it depends on what I'm dealing with, what I'm thinking about.
Sure, at the time, yeah.
Yeah.
My takeaway notes on Finesse was this. Finesse is about attitude. Attitude that edifies both you and those around you.
Sure.
And that to me is the essence of Finesse.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with wisdom. And one of the themes and chapters is wisdom.
Yeah.
I think the ability to know when and how to finesse comes with a lot of wisdom.
I agree. Wisdom, I think, was perhaps the second chapter that I wrote. And I was thinking about leadership, and it's always been my long-held belief that smart, effective leadership requires wisdom. And you and I have talked about wisdom
Right,
before,
right.
strong feelings about wisdom. And so, wisdom was something that I try to live by and live with. And so I was hopeful that some of the things that I wrote about wisdom might resonate with the reader.
Well, since you touched on leadership, let me ask this. Is there a connection back to your original book on leadership? And my takeaway note from reading this book on leadership was just a simple one. Leadership makes the impossible possible.
Yeah, I like that. I like that line. I think it does. And to answer your question, I think, yes, there is a connection with leadership, and perhaps the book Leadership, The View from Here. Look, leadership is perhaps one of the most pervasive concepts on the planet, and its tentacles reach far and wide. But we have to be reminded that at its very core, leadership is about people. It's about inspiring. It's about motivating people. And this book, Beyond Words, is about people. And it's about inspiring people to think more deeply. And not only to think, but to act. And action is another key component to leadership. So yes, there is a connection to the first book.
Yeah. And the chapter on happiness spoke to me because I'm dealing with a lot of things and issues and people now who are trying to find their happiness, trying to find what makes them happy, trying to understand what happiness truly is. And I think you succinctly put it. Happiness is being free from fear, ignorance, traditions, beliefs, systems, norms, peer pressure, et cetera, et cetera. That no one can make you happy. You have to free yourself from these things to become and be happy.
Right.
Talk to me about happiness a little bit.
Well, I can't really tell you what my mindset was at the time that I was writing happiness. It came to me, and I thought this was something that I wanted to spend some time with. But I think you hit it on the head. I don't think it's something that we find externally. I think it's something that is within us and something that we release and we liberate. And when we do so, we liberate ourselves. And we're free to be our best selves. We're free to develop our inherent talents. And I think until we can get to that place, then we may not truly live up to our full potential and fulfill our purpose.
Right. I think throughout the themes, it struck me that the exercise in this, in part, is to figure out how to be honest, with ourselves, be honest to ourselves. And the chapter on knowledge, Knowledge Speaks, really said to me that that's kind of where we are. Knowledge is a fear of the truth. And a lot of people right now don't want to know, deal, open up the box to discuss what is true and what is not.
Yeah.
But there is no growth until you face up to what is true and what is not.
I agree. And, I really enjoyed writing Knowledge Speaks. I think that knowledge has a way of eradicating myths and falsehoods. But unless you are ready to embrace truth, then knowledge may not be something that you're so inclined to pursue.
Yeah. And my mantra around that we've talked about before is a simple one, because I think it's that process to get to internalizing and an internal filtering system and working it through our head, heart, and gut, how we think, how we feel, how we act. To take that information, turn it into education, education into knowledge, knowledge into wisdom, and then turn wisdom into action. But it all starts with education and knowledge.
Yeah.
And if you don't know a new thing about the thing you're trying to address, then you're not going to ever get there.
I agree.
And sometimes I think we don't want to get there. I think we know what we need to do, what we need to change, what we need to learn, who we need to address, what we need to address. I think the fear, not so much from not being successful, but the fear of having to expose or be passionate about the purpose of why I believe this so strongly holds us back.
Well, I agree. I think I mentioned in that essay, do you really want to know?
Right.
Because it will unravel everything that you've been told and everything that you think you know. It can be unbelievable, the truth. sometimes we can get satisfied and I think content with where we are, and we're okay with that, and that's okay. I'm not judging. We're all in different places.
No, we
I would
are.
much rather know the truth. I'd much rather have the knowledge.
I would always rather know the truth. I think I've said this before. Paul Harvey had it right. Now for the rest of the story.
Yeah,
That's always the rest of the story.
I've heard you say that
And
before.
usually the rest of the story is the truth.
Yeah,
It's what we know, what we've been told, what we've been processed to know and learn. But that's not really, and when you see it, and he was such a master at just flipping what we always thought we knew to be gospel truth, to be this is the truth, and show us the other side. And then you're left to kind of ponder. Which takes me to when we talked about truth, equality speaks. We
yeah,
are at that crossroads of equity and equality. We're at this crossroads of figuring out what does it really mean to be a majority, minority, city, community, state, country. We're at the crossroads of figuring out how we're going to compromise, negotiate, and come together as human beings for our common humanity. And the equality issues are not going to go away until we address them. And we can't skip over them. We can't gloss over them. But it takes a lot of understanding, truth, wisdom, finesse, leadership to be able to work through and walk through this myriad of issues. And we just seem to not want to do that.
yeah. Well, equality is. I think it's one of the. I think all the essays are powerful, but that one really struck a chord with me. I can tell you where I was when I started thinking about equality. I just witnessed the death of George Floyd on television, and it motivated Brothers Keeper, as well as Inequality Speaks. And Inequality Speaks, as you probably know, is probably one of the longest essays in the book.
Right.
Well, it just it took me to a place where I just I couldn't. Well, I had to force myself to stop writing, because I knew it was going long. It was going too long, or longer than it probably needed to. But there was so much that was racing through my mind and racing through my heart. It was difficult for me to just stop.
Well, it's a good piece. It speaks to where we are. And I think what it showed and said was an interesting perspective, because I think this is where a lot of people are. At the advice of wisdom, I held my tongue. We've all been there to the point of almost biting off our tongues.
Yeah.
But now it probably is the time not to hold our tongue anymore, because we realize holding our tongue does not get us where we thought it would.
Right.
And so the question of the protesting, marching, demonstrating, policy changes, legislative change, being involved with the political process, being a civic engaged process, all that becomes so important now. But I think it takes, as you've said through the series of these 21 themes, it takes all of these 21 to be clear on how you're going to approach your role and place in this response to the challenges ahead. And that's why I love that the intersection of philosophy and poetry and reflection, because I think we all need to reflect on what do we really want to do and serve in this capacity, and how we want to serve in this capacity. So that leads me to, in the few seconds and minutes we have left, to ask this important question.
Sure.
The last chapter is entitled The Speaker, and I love the speaker. Because how I summed up the speaker is this famous little quote: when the pupil is ready, the teacher will come.
I like that.
When the pupil is ready, the teacher will show up. So the question is now, when and where and whom are we ready to play which respective role? Are we going to be the teacher? Or are we going to be the student and the pupil? Or a combination of both? But it's a question we have to answer, because I'll put it this way, as someone said the other day, we can't remain stupid. We can't stay stuck in our stupidity and ignorance.
Sure.
And saying I don't know doesn't work anymore, because it's too much, it's available to you all around you, the knowledge, the information.
Sure.
What you're saying to me when you say I don't know is I don't want to know, because as long as I say I don't know, I don't have to make a choice or a decision to engage or not engage. No commitment, right? No accountability. And you speak to that as part of leadership. it is about commitment and accountability. It is about finding your purpose, as you speak to in the book. It is about finding your passion.
Mhm.
And then again, I keep going back to your words of action. What are you going to do?
I talk about that, I think, very specifically, I think, in the future, where I think I referenced the future is now. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
So it's a call to action.
yeah.
We
It's simple as
we
time.
can't go forward without taking action.
So that leads us now to the great piece of the discussion this evening, which has been great. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share the book with
Thank you
our
very much.
audience and the rest of Houstonians. Where can we get the book?
Well, you can get the book by visiting my website. The book was just officially released on yesterday, and I've had tremendous response to it. So you can visit my website, russellrichardrr.com, and you can purchase the book directly from the website.
Well, Russell, congratulations on doing the book. Congratulations on success on the success of the book.
Thank you.
And just a wonderful tool to help us in this kind of figuring out where we are, where we want to be as human beings individually, and then collectively, what is our response?
Sure.
I hope that it has a broad audience. I hope that many people from all walks of Houstonians pick it up. I hope that it starts a dialogue and conversation between them, particularly if they come from different perspectives, opinions, and viewpoints about issues concerning our life together. And I think it can lend itself to that kind of conversation and dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the people that always tries to go beyond what I
Sure.
see and have in front of me. I think it lends itself to workshops and seminars where you get a diverse group of people who think differently than each other in the room.
Yeah.
And just by going through the 21 themes, it allows a great conversation and discussion to occur about what we want to do.
Yeah.
So I applaud you wholeheartedly. Congratulations, my friend, on the
Thank you.
success of this book. So let's sum up with this. Let me give you, I got about 30 seconds. Let me give you any closing thoughts or anything we have not touched on that you want to make sure we mention.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I think I echo all the sentiments you mentioned earlier. I think we are at an inflection point. You mentioned legacy earlier. We are at an inflection point with a very important question that we must answer. And that is, how will we all be remembered?
And because I love doing this kind of work, as you know, I took your wonderful title of your book, Beyond Words, and this is what I came up with.
Mhm.
Beyond. Be your own narrative director. Be your own narrative director.
Yep.
All of life is a series of stories along the journey, right? It's all about the narrative. You change the narrative, you change the outcome, you change the perspective.
Sure.
I think the narrative piece of our lives needs to be looked at. This book helps you look at it at that, and be the director of that narrative.
Mhm.
Take charge of that narrative. And then I took the word words and said WORD, work on the reality, deliver self. Work on your own reality and deliver yourself. Nobody can save you. Nobody's going to save you but yourself. So here we go. It's a great opportunity to use the book to be that kind of deeply introspective about one's individual life, and therefore hopefully help others by being clear on who we are and whom we're called to serve and how. So the book is Beyond Words, an intersection of philosophy, poetry, and deep, deep thinking and inspiration to help you in the journey. Russell Richard is the author. Russell, thank you again. We look forward to having you on in the future. I think we're going to probably get a panel together next where we can talk about the themes in the book much deeper and go for it. It is timely. I think it comes out at a great time and where we are as human beings and Houstonians after the pandemic. It allows us to do that great work of our own. Well, I'm going to get out of here for now. I need to mention one thing as we go forward. We're going to start looking at some what we call critical conversations, critical issues that we're going to dive a little deeper into in Dialogue Houston going forward, probably beginning in the fall. And so I just wanted to give us a heads up on that. So until next week, until we come together, until we see each other again, as always, stay well, be safe, and peace, power, and love.